Hi, welcome to DrumWise Meets. Today I'm here with a drummer who's worked with the likes of Liz Phair, LP, Booker T. Jones, Rachel Platten and Dua Lipa. This is DrumWise Meets Neal Daniels. Hi Neal.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So my first question, the typical first question in an interview, what age did you get into drums and what bands or artists inspired you when you first started?
Well, I guess I started, my dad was a drummer, not full-time, but he was, there was always drums in the house. So I started at a young age, but I guess I officially started in the 5th grade when I was 10. I started on a snare drum. And then without telling my parents, I switched to the French horn. And I told my dad when I came back to the house, and he sat me down and said, you should probably switch back to the drums. And thank God. So I was about 10 years old. And what bands and drummers inspired me at that age? Was that the second part?
Go with bands rather than drummers.
Bands. Well, I was growing up in the 90s, but as a young kid in the 90s, and I'm a little embarrassed to say the bands that I listened to, but I had an older spirit at a young age. I was really liking the Metallica and the Panteras and the Slayers. And I also loved like the Alice in Chains and the Stone Temple Pilots and those bands. But all my friends were listening to like the Blink-182s and the Sum 41s and, that kind of thing. So I got along with the older kids musically.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent. And we'll come on to drummers in a minute. That's why I said go with bands instead. But sure. Talking about when you first started, what was your first drum set?
My first drum set, my dad had a Ludwig Black Oyster Pearl in the house. So that was really what I played at a young age. But the first drum set that I bought was a DW crazy blue onyx color in really horrible sizes. So that was the first drum set I bought, was a DW kit, but I grew up playing on a old Ludwig kit. Yeah.
Cool. And is that Ludwig kit still in the family? Do you still have it?
Still got it. Still in my basement, in my house that I grew up in.
Awesome.
So doesn't get played, but it certainly looks nice all stacked up.
It's probably worth quite a lot as well now.
Yeah, at the very least it looks cool.
Yeah.
For sure. I could never sell it. So
Now, while we're talking about equipment, what's your current equipment setup?
All Gretsch. Been with Gretsch for approaching 8 years now. Gibraltar hardware, but touring a lot of DW hardware mostly. Really the first time I've said this in public, but I just switched to Paiste cymbals like a week ago. So really excited about that. And Vic Firth, Remo, Porter and Davies Thrums, Roland Electronics, LP percussion, and a few other knickknacks in there. Big fat snare drum, but Gretsch and Paiste for sure, always.
Cool. With my backlog of editing, when this goes out, you'll have been it won't be new news anymore. You'll have been an artist for ages.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been with Zildjian for forever.
Yeah.
And it was just a nice switch. It just felt like a lot of my friends play Zildjian, but more of my heroes and guys I look up to play Paiste.
Cool.
Just a nice fit. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So on to possibly a couple of difficult questions here, some that people have found quite tough. First one of those is, if you had to pick just one, who would be your all-time favorite drummer?
Jeff Porcaro.
Oh, okay. So that was a really easy answer.
Yeah, Jeff Porcaro. If I had to pick one, it's really hard to pick one, but if I had to pick one, Jeff Porcaro.
Okay, why?
He just has that rock swing that's very hard to find these days. He played on a lot of records that we all mutually love, and he died way too soon. I studied with his dad, Joe Porcaro, in LA. That was the music school I went to, where he was a main teacher, and he just had a thing that not a lot of people have. I try to listen to I gravitate towards liking drummers that have a rock swing. I think so on the grid these days, and guys back then, even like, Tommy Lee in that world of rock drumming, those guys had a swing, and Jeff had that for sure. Yeah. That's my answer. Final answer.
Oh, that was easy then. Nice. But if I opened it up and said, give us some other influences of yours, because let's face it, it is a hard question, and we all have so many different influences, from our lifetimes. So who else?
Well, from guys I grew up listening to that affected my drumming, I would say, besides Jeff, Tommy Lee, Lars Ulrich, only between the years of 1989 and 1993. Eric Kretz from Stone Temple Pilots. That's a weird one, but I listened to him growing up, and that affected my style. Matt Cameron, guys like that, and Sean Kinney from Alice in Chains. Like those 90s rock guys really impacted me a lot. Ralph Humphrey, who was another teacher at my school. He played with Frank Zappa and a million other people. He a big influence on me. I'll probably think of a million more after this is over, but off the top of my head, more rock guys, older rock guys. Yeah. Tommy Aldridge.
Okay, yeah.
White Snake and Ozzy back in the day. I mean, legends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, on to the second difficult, well, supposedly difficult one, but you might just answer it immediately like that last one. Sure. So, what's been the highlight of your career so far?
Highlights. Well, I mean, a gig highlight could be, playing the New Year's Eve ball drop in Times Square. That was with Rachel Platten. We played the Pyeongchang Olympics. That was a highlight. That was really cool. Playing with an artist highlight, Booker T. Al Jackson. Al Jackson was obviously, or for people that don't know, was Booker's drummer back in the day, and played on all those Stax hit records and hit songs. And playing with him is a highlight every time, because he's just such a legend. And so gig wise, but those I mentioned, but artist wise, Booker T for sure.
Excellent. Your answer was actually meant to be right now doing a DrumWise meets with you, but
oh, sorry, I had a glitch.
Yeah, wrong answer. Sorry. Never mind. Right.
Sorry. We'll do it again.
Yeah, take two. What's been the hot? No. Okay, so now to maybe the other end of the scale, from highlights to maybe lowlights. Okay. Have you ever had anything go wrong on stage that you can tell us about? Whether it's gear fails or brain fails, we want like epic stories here.
Never really a brain fail. Or gear fails all the time. I mean, a lot of gigs, most shows I play have, we're all wearing in-ears, and there's tracks and the click going on the whole time. And, your wireless pack, my pack is cut out, multiple times on multiple gigs. And, I have to, I'm yelling in the talk back to get a new pack. And I'm, there's a big audience and there's tracks going on. So you really can't the waiver from the click. So, I'm yelling, tap your foot or stomp your leg. And I'm watching the keyboard player, stomp his foot for the rest of the song. I mean, that can give you a heart attack for sure. Or having a snare drum break, and a big part, and you have to rip a snare drum out. But those are just things that you just have to deal with. It's just part of the gig, it's nothing like crazy life altering has ever happened. I would just say that your in-ears cutting out is definitely is pretty rough to deal with.
Yeah. Sure. Tell me about it. Okay, so When you first get a gig with a new artist, how do
Mhm.
you learn the material? So, just for example, do you just like listen to it on Spotify or Amazon or whatever? Um, or do you listen and transcribe it? Or does it ever happen where they go, here you go, Neil, here's like the whole show written out in drum music for you in this folder. Just read all of the music.
Never that one, but it depends. I mean, I find that if I get a gig and then I immediately listen to it and write a chart, I'll never internalize it ever, and I'll always be. And it happens every time. Sometimes I think I'll just have the charts. I have like a little hi-hat clip from my iPad mini, but I'll never get off of it. And then I'm never playing with the band. I'm always just reading the charts. Sometimes you have to do that if the gig is the next day and it's a high pressure situation. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I have time, I always try to memorize it right off the bat. Or I'll write a quick chart just to see the form and read it once and then put it away, just so I can visualize it once. But a lot of times there are tracks and the SPD, rolling SPDs involved, and a lot of samples. So on top of learning the song, you also have to chop up samples and put it on your sample pad, and it's a whole other part you have to memorize. So for me, the easiest way is just to try to internalize it right off the bat. That's how I learn songs the quickest.
Cool.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about the electronics side of things, how
Yeah.
does that work for you with the artists that you have been working for? Are you in charge of samples and backing tracks, click tracks, and starting and stopping?
There's usually a playback guy. I mean, sometimes every band is different. I mean, I have run tracks for a lot of pop artists. And, the drummer sometimes has a couple computers in the back, and I can start and stop the show. But it seems nowadays the piano player, it's kind of his world that has a playback world, or there's an actual playback guy off stage. But as far as the samples on my pad, I usually program all of those, and I have a sample pad. But there's nothing involving tracks with that. It's just hand claps or whatever there is of whoop whoop or something. And that's never been a sound. I don't know why I said that.
That was my Instagram clip right there, though.
Yeah, great. Yeah, for me, a lot of gigs have different stuff going on. So sometimes I'll just have the pad, or sometimes I'll have the pad and then like a bunch of those circle rolling pads around the whole kit, and you know, whatever you need, whenever you need for the gig.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now on to a couple of curveball questions.
Okay.
And the first one of those is, what are your hobbies away from drums?
Hobbies away from drums. Probably looking on reverb for other drums that will sit on my shelf, that I can buy. I just, since COVID has been going on, I had a whole year and a half of a lot of touring get canceled. So I basically built a whole recording studio at my house in Los Angeles. So my recent hobby has been recording, and that's been really keeping me afloat and busy this whole in these COVID times. So the hobbies have been, learning, really digging deep into Pro Tools and mixing and recording. And I acquired a kabillion microphones in the past 12 months. And besides that, food, cooking, eating, and, just not talking about music as a hobby, and just trying to live life a little bit.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
And just to explain where that question came from, when I wrote that, I thought, well, for all of us, when we started, drums will have been a hobby, and of course, it then develops into this career, and we get paid to do it, whether it's teaching or playing. But it can still be something that we love doing, which I suppose we could still describe as a hobby, even if we just get paid to do it.
Sure. Yeah, it seems like my touring schedule, it surpasses the hobby level.
Yeah.
Whew, boy. Yeah, but there are a lot of off days, and then hobbies come from just going around to different countries and places, eating local food, and find you find joy
Yeah.
and all that. So,
But it's obviously, yeah, it's still something that you love doing, and
yeah,
you get paid to do it. So
of
great.
course, greatest gig in the world if you love what you do,
Mm.
for sure. Yeah.
Now, on to the most anticipated question of the DrumWise Meets series. Now,
Oh boy.
disclaimer here, the US guys have very different answers to the UK guys. We were
Oh,
talking off camera about, UK food and so on. And, if you've spent any time in the UK, you know that we have a very big, what we call biscuit selection. So,
yep.
my question is, what's your favorite cookie?
My favorite cookie?
Mm.
Oh God. Well, uh, growing up as a Jewish boy in the Chicago suburbs, I will have to say my favorite cookie will have to be a classic deli black and white cookie.
Okay.
How
Can you
about that?
explain more? Because I have no idea what that is.
Well, black and white cookie, it's a cookie, circle cookie. Half of it's black, half it's white. It's just a classic Jewish deli cookie.
Okay.
Or stay put. These are also great.
Ah,
I
yeah.
don't know if you can, if you can show this on camera, but the Milanos, we always travel with those. But any like deli cookie, or you're getting me real excited. There's a Linzer. You guys have Linzer tarts?
No, I don't think so.
Another Jewish deli thing. It's like a cookie sandwich with it's like two cookies, and then there's like a raspberry filling, and then the middle of the cookie has like a bunch of raspberry jelly in it, and then it's all covered with powdered sugar. It's a mess. It's
Oh, yeah, but that sounds like a really good mess.
really good mess. But answer black and white cookie for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the black and white cookie, would you ever dunk it?
No, that's a sin. A mortal sin. No. Black and white cookie is just meant to be eaten and enjoyed, you know. It's by itself. It's just a good cookie.
So you are not a dunker.
And it depends on the cookie, but black and white cookie, no. And I will say that the black and white cookie is it's not hard. It's a soft, you kind of tear. It's not like a Milano or something where you black
Ah.
and white cookie, it's a foldable experience.
Okay. All right. So it's not. So it doesn't lend itself well to dunking then.
No, no. I appreciate that question though very
There you
much.
go. See, it's a good one. You weren't expecting me to ask you that, were you?
No, no. I wish every interview had cookie questions. I
See,
mean,
I told you
yeah,
earlier when we were talking about food. I said, "Oh, but we'll get on to food." There we are.
yeah, love it. Thank you.
So, my last question for you today. Um, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, so when you first started playing or when you first started taking drums more seriously, what would that advice be?
I love this question so much. My advice would be the less notes you play, the more money you'll make.
Mhm.
And I would stay away. I would tell myself to stay away from all the left foot clave cowbell thing, and just practice playing with a click and practice playing the money beats.
Mm.
It just seems like that will never go away, and that's what all the gigs require. And too many people are this whole Instagram world of chops and all this stuff is very confusing to a lot of young players, and it's just a lot of guys, unfortunately, that are playing a million notes are really just doing it in their bedroom and have never had a gig. And it makes a lot of kids growing up confused on what's needed. Nice to have that stuff, but my advice would be keep it simple, stupid.
I love that. That's a great answer. And we're probably a similar age. So when we were first like playing drums and learning, we didn't
Mhm.
have all this. I didn't even have internet. Like there's VHS tapes of like Hudson Music like drum
Yeah.
videos and stuff.
Oh
And
yeah.
the world has changed, isn't it, for young drummers? Definitely, like learning in a different way. Instagram is great, but it's also a bit. It can be a bit of a bad thing as well, can't it?
It's amazing, but there's what comes with that is just a lot of garbage, constant. I mean, God, my Instagram is just full of all this stuff. I mean, it's my fault because I just follow a million drummers, but it's crazy, man. There's a lot of stuff out there, and a lot of the info is confusing. Because who wants to watch a drum video of just 2 and 4 simple beat? I mean, those videos don't even exist. It's boring to watch, but man, it's that's what pays the bills for me, at least.
Yeah, totally. So Neal, thank you so much for spending your time with us here at DrumWise today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.